He says, and because this part is worthy of choice and of imitation by others. Remember, he told us, unless you have what Lincoln called towering genius, the best you're going to do is imitation of those better than you. And Machiavelli is saying here, he's calling our attention that this part is worthy of choice and of imitation by others. And therefore, he says, I do not want to admit it. The Duke, which was the nickname for Cesare, having taken the Romagna, which was a province, found it commanded by impotent lords who had been quicker to despoil their subjects than to correct them, and who gave them matter for disunion, not for union. As the province was full of robberies, of factional quarrels, and of every reason for arrogance, he, Cesare Borgia, judged it necessary, wishing to reduce that province to peace and obedience under the princely arm, to give them good government. Now notice here again, remember I said here about how Machiavelli says the most outrageous things in the most peaceful sounding language. We all have heard about the need for peace and good government, but have you ever heard about a country being reduced to peace and good government? What does reduced mean here for Machiavelli?
Beaten to it.
Yes, exactly. And he tells us explicitly in the next couple of lines. So now, here's the problem. He's conquered the Romagna, but he finds that those who have been in charge of it have let the people run wild. There's robberies, factional quarrels. The people have not been corrected by the lords. And so here's Cesare's solution. Machiavelli says, so that he placed there Messer Ramiro di Orco, a cruel and expeditious man, to whom he gave the fullest power. That man, in a little time, and with very great reputation, reduced it to peace and unity. Again, reduced it to peace and unity. The Duke then judged that such excessive authority was not necessary, because he did not doubt that it would arouse hatred. And he set up a civil judiciary in which every city had its own advocate in the midst of that province with the most excellent president. And because he knew that the past severities had generated some hatred, when he says the past severities, Ramiro di Orco, I mean, this was a Himmler type that Cesare put in charge to reduce this province to peace and unity. And he simply said, until this stops, I'm going to pick 5 people out at random and cut them in half. Well, very quickly, all the trouble stopped. But as you can imagine, the people, as Machiavelli says here, that this kind of action, as Machiavelli says, generated some hatred. Okay, he knew that the past severities had generated some hatred. In order to purge the minds of that people and to gain them all to himself, he wished to show that if any cruelty had been done, it had not come from him, but from the harsh nature of his minister. And he found an occasion. He had him placed one morning in the piazza in Cesena, in 2 pieces, with a piece of wood and a bloody knife alongside. The ferocity of that spectacle left the people at the same time satisfied and stupefied. Okay. Now, remember here, at the beginning of this paragraph, Machiavelli doesn't just tell us this story about Cesare and Ramiro di Orco. He tells us what about the story that he's about to tell us.
That this was a man to be emulated.
Right. He says, I do not want to omit this. Right? I do not want to omit this. And then he tells us what Cesare did. In other words, he's holding this up here as a high, if not the highest example of political prudence.